It is day 193 of the second Trump administration, and we are starting tonight, you guessed it, with money, power, politics. For weeks now, midnight tonight was set to be Trump's big deadline for countries to either reach a trade deal or face the big tariffs he announced months ago. Just yesterday, the president posted, quote, "The August 1st deadline stands strong and will not be extended." But today, just hours before that deadline hit, he's blowing up those terms. He announced new tariffs on countries that have not reached a deal, some as high as 41%. Those will now take effect a week from now. Are you following that? When it comes to America's three biggest trading partners, today Trump gave Mexico a 90-day extension. But Canada, no breathing room for the Great White North. He signed an executive order raising Canada's tariff rate from 25 to 35%. And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says they have the makings of a deal with China, but no announcements yet. The deadline there is August 12th. Other major partners do have deals in place, like the UK, Europe, Vietnam, and South Korea, but the tariffs in those deals are still huge increases from what was in place before Trump took office. And the details in all of those agreements are still unclear. But here's what is clear. Those foreign countries don't pay the tariffs. We do. American companies, American importers, and alas, the American consumer. Today, a federal appeals court took up the question of whether Trump can unilaterally impose tariffs. The court appeared skeptical of the government's claim that Trump can use an emergency powers law to carry out those tariffs. With that, let's get smarter with the help of our lead-off panel. Peter Baker is here tonight, Chief White House Correspondent for the New York Times. Leanne Caldwell joins us, Chief Washington Correspondent for Puck. And my dear friend Steve Leisman, CNBC Senior Economics Reporter. Steve, you know I am turning to you first. Trump wants people to focus on the big new tariff rates. But the reality is he's just pushing the deadline again. Like, has Taco Tuesday become Taco Thursday at the White House?
You know, Steph, I don't think so. I think these are for real. I think tonight's a fairly historic night where I think you can go back and when you write the history, you'll say, this is the night that the global free trade era begun by the United States and the post-war era led by the United States really came to an end. There is now, I think, a permanent tariff curtain around this country. Whether that's for good or for ill, well, we'll find out. But right now, what it means is that one person, one man has put in place the tariffs without Congress. There's some question about the legality of what he's done. But you can also say, I guess it was done democratically. If you voted for Donald Trump and didn't know he was going to put these tariffs on that were going to raise your prices and limit your choice, well, you were either willfully or were just misinformed. So this is a big night. This is it. We are now in a place where there are tariffs that have gone up from what were 3% and an effort that went on for decades to reduce tariff barriers and increase free trade. It's over now. There's a tariff curtain around America.
Peter, what's your take on this? A tariff curtain around America.
Struck deals in the last few days, at least as he has described them, with some of our biggest trading partners, South Korea, Japan, the European Union, all around 15% tariff. So I think you have to assume, therefore, that going forward, any future tariffs with most of our trading partners will be around that level, if not higher. The question is what they might be. So yes, in that sense, a tariff curtain seems to be a likely sustained result of where we're going. But it's still confusing exactly where and how much for whom, because in fact, you're right. He did once again punt on the deadline. The deadline was originally like April, then it was July, then it was August 1st. That would be tomorrow. Now it's August 7th. And they're obviously leaving room in the next week to find some more deals with some of these other countries that haven't come up with deals to come up with a rate that they can go with. And again, it'll probably be a 15% or more rate. So it's not like it's going to go down from that. In fact, these are the highest tariff rates we've had in a century. So we should assume that that's the reality going forward. But exactly how much it's going to be with which country still seems up in the air. Let's talk about Canada for 1 second. That's the one country that's going into effect tonight as opposed to a week from now. Why? Because Trump wants to make a message to Canada, which he is mad about. At the same time, the 35% rate that he's imposed on Canada doesn't apply to goods that are coming over the border based on the U.S. Mexico-Canada agreement that he signed in his first term. Well, 94% of the exports from Canada flow under that agreement, according to some estimates. So it's still not clear, whether this is exactly what's going to end up where things are with Canada, or if the president's going to end up doing some other things. And I think that's a hardship for businesses that are trying to make plans, countries that are trying to negotiate, sustainable agreements.
Yeah, but what it says to businesses and countries around the world, Leanne, is that you better hurry up, and bring your gifts to President Trump if you want to get that exemption, if you want to be on the right side. Because look at Canada's the perfect example. He's looking to impose this 35% tariff because he doesn't like how Canada is positioning itself, or the position they're taking on Palestine. Right? That has absolutely nothing to do with manufacturing, labor, trade deficits, nothing.
Yeah, it was really eye-opening today when the president said that the trade impact of Canada could be because he is upset that Canada is considering recognizing a Palestinian state. So remember, the entire point of these tariffs, according to the president, was two-part. One, to bring manufacturing back into the United States, and also to fix what he called a trade imbalance with other countries, which he says were treating the United States unfairly. But when he makes moves that pertain to completely unrelated issues like foreign policy, you have to question what the ultimate goal is here. The president touted this week, or actually today, he said that tariffs are bringing in, quote, trillions of dollars into the U.S. I have not seen an estimate anywhere close to that, but they are saying that it is bringing billions of revenue into the United States. So, there's all these mixed messages of what the point is, and ultimately what it comes down to, and what it's going to come down to, what the American public is going to care about, is not about trade imbalance, but about cost. How is this going to impact their pocketbooks when they go to Walmart, when they go to the grocery store? And that's ultimately what Americans are going to care about, and what Donald Trump is still where the verdict is still out.
Steve, we're also seeing the president give all sorts of exemptions for different industries and different companies. So if you're running any sort of business right now, how are you interfacing with this White House?
Well, Bloomberg just did a really good story on this. There's something like $1 trillion in exemptions, they say. And there doesn't seem to be, unlike, by the way, in the first Trump presidency, first Trump term, there's no actual process for getting these exemptions that anybody understands. It's talking to the president. I don't know if it's donations or whatever it is, but it's unclear what that process is. And I would like to say a word of sympathy tonight for the customs duties officers who were overworked beforehand and trying to implement this essentially crazy system. And if I could just go back, I don't think Leanne was saying this, but the president is saying this idea of bringing money back into the United States. No, this money is coming from the United States to the United States. This is a major, major tax on the American public. And I want to just give you one little anecdote from a CFO that I talked to who said, do you think we're all that stupid in terms of how we are out there purchasing things overseas that our suppliers have 15% extra margin to give in order to pay that tariffs and not change our price? No, that's not true. Companies are going to pay it for a while, and then they're going to pass it along, and already the American public is paying it. We saw inflation go up. It's going the wrong way over the last several months.
Peter, given everything that Steve just said, right, what do you think we're stupid? What does it tell you that the White House did not have any sort of big event today when the president made this announcement about tariffs? He loves having proclamations, announcements. He loves bringing a crowd there. But couple that with people who actually understand how trade works, what the impact of these tariffs are going to be. What does it tell you that Trump kind of did this quietly when tomorrow or tonight, essentially midnight, is supposed to be the big historic night?
Yeah, look, they're following his lead because, in fact, it isn't an organized process here in the way a typical presidency would work. There's not a series of meetings and, plans in place and, consultations with the Hill or with foreign allies and so forth. It's just very seat of the pants by what Donald Trump happens to be thinking or feeling at any given moment, and the staff knows that, and they don't want to get ahead of things. They don't want to plan a big event if he would come along and then undercut it. They're taking their lead from him. He obviously didn't want a big event today. He obviously is still trying to hold out the idea that there could be deals in the next week that would make him feel better about this. But, we're in this really no man's land in a sense because of the legal question that Leanne just raised, I think, where we talked about the idea that we're using tariffs not just to correct an economic imbalance, but to achieve foreign policy goals. Well, the statute, the law, the president is citing in order to impose these tariffs, which has never been used the way he's using it before and isn't under court scrutiny, as you pointed out, is specifically about national security threats. Well, is it a national security threat if Canada happens to recognize a Palestinian state and we don't? I mean, you can see why that's against our foreign policy interests, perhaps. But it's hard to justify that as a national security threat that justifies giving extraordinary power to the president without congressional approval. So there's all kinds of uncertainty here. And you don't even know if you're a business whether or not only you not know what rate might be opposed, what date it might be opposed, what goods it might be imposed on. You don't even know if it'll hold up in court.
Steve, I want you to explain this to our audience because a lot of people say, hey, look at the markets. They're doing great. These tariffs aren't going to have that big of an impact. But the reality is, it is just a handful of massive companies like Meta, like Microsoft, that are propping up the markets, while all these companies underneath are already or will soon be seriously hurt from the tariffs, and they're not kicking it when it comes to stock performance.
No, we're hearing big charges against, ironically, the manufacturing companies. It was the tech companies that did well during the Biden administration, and some of the other manufacturing companies did well as well. But now what's happening is it's the manufacturing companies that are bearing the brunt of this, the GMs, the Fords, other companies who import things that become part of the products that they make here. I'll give you some examples of, this is from my good friend Mike Santoli, tariff impact here. Apparel and accessory stocks down 19%. Household products down 7%. Pharmaceuticals down 6%. These are the stocks. So you're right. It is the big tech companies that have been. And if not for this huge AI boom, for which there's been a lot of betting that this is going to be the future and will lead to tremendous profits and revenue, the stock market would be quite different because of these tariffs. And in a sense, I think also, Stephanie, the market is have not seen the impact in the data, so it's kind of moved on. But that impact may be yet to come in the months ahead.